Welcome back, fellow privacy rebels. I'm Pseudo, the podcaster who still thinks a gene is something you inherit from your parents, not a data point that corporations scramble to monetize. This is Impractical Privacy, the show that treats every strand of your digital life like a secret sauce you'd never hand over to a fast food chain. Today we're pulling back the lab coat on a topic that's been buzzing louder than a beehive in a biotech conference. Consumer DNA testing kits. Those cheek swab kits promise you a family tree and a hint of whether you're part Viking. But behind the glossy packaging lies a sprawling data mine that could map your health, your habits, and even worse, your relatives' lives. Strap in, because we're about to decode how your genome is becoming the newest commodity on the surveillance market. First, a quick reality check. In 2024, more than 30 million Americans have already mailed a saliva sample to a company that promises to tell you whether you're 5% Irish, 12% Viking, and have a 0.01% chance of being a lactose-intolerant superhero. The allure is obvious. Who doesn't want to know if they're related to a medieval knight, or why their great-grandma kept a mysterious heirloom? The kits are cheap, the results are flashy, and the marketing teams have turned genealogy into a binge-worthy hobby. But behind those glossy Instagram posts lies a data pipeline that looks more like a biotech version of the NSA's PRISM than a family tree service. Let's break down the payload you're sending in that little tube of spit. 1. They collect raw DNA data. The lab extracts roughly 600 gigabytes of genetic information from each sample. That raw genome is the foundation for everything else they do. 2. Health-related phenotypes. When you tick the optional health questionnaire, the company pairs your genotype with things like carrier status for cystic fibrosis or predisposition to certain cancers. 3. Family tree uploads. Many people import their GED-COM files from other genealogy services. These files let the lab stitch together larger relational graphs, which are gold for marketers and occasionally law enforcement. 4. Location and device metadata. Every time you open their app or website, the server logs your IP address, timestamp, and the device you used. That's how they can do geo-targeted advertising or comply with regional regulations. 5 is survey answers. Optional fields about diet, lifestyle, or medical history let the company fine-tune predictive health models and sell richer data bundles to third parties. In short, you're not just sending a cheek swab, you're sending a digital passport that tells a company everything from your eye color genes to the fact that you once ate a taco at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. And yes, that taco timestamp is a data point. Now that we know what's inside the tube, let's talk about who actually gets to look at it. The testing company itself. 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, MyHeritage, and the like store the raw data on cloud providers such as Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. Third-party partners, advertising networks, health research firms, and even pharmaceutical companies purchase de-identified or sometimes poorly anonymized datasets for product development and targeted marketing. Law enforcement agencies. In the United States, the FBI can request DNA profiles through the Cloud Act or a subpoena. Europe has a similar law enforcement exception clause under the GDPR. Data brokers. Companies like LexisNexis or Axiom have been known to acquire aggregated genetic insights to enrich their customer profiling databases. If you thought your Netflix watch history was a goldmine, wait until the pharma exec sees that you're a carrier for BRCA1. Suddenly watching becomes prescribing. This type of data getting into the wrong hands can be a nightmare scenario. But talk is cheap. Let's look at the hard evidence. The 23andMe settlement from 2022. The FTC fined the company for sharing health-related data with third parties without explicit consent. The lesson? The fine print can be a privacy trap. The Ancestry DNA law enforcement request from 2023. Investigators used a relative's DNA from Ancestry to identify a murder suspect through familial searching. Your DNA can implicate relatives you've never met. The MyHeritage data leak from 2024. An improperly secured Amazon S3 bucket exposed usernames, hashed passwords, and fragments of DNA data. Cloud misconfigurations are a real threat, even for privacy-first firms. The GED Match Golden State Killer case, 2018 to 2021, a public genealogy site helped police solve cold cases, prompting the site to later restrict law enforcement access. Public databases can become de facto surveillance tools. When you hear family tree, think family net. One branch can pull the whole organism into the spotlight. All right, so we've covered some of the classic horror stories, hackers walking away with a suitcase full of raw genome data. But let's be honest, the real danger isn't always a neon-lit data theft hotline. Even if your DNA never lands in a cybercriminal's hands, handing it over to a consumer genetics company can still land you in a very sticky web of unintended consequences. So what are the hidden perils that don't involve a data breach? Let's walk through the most common and surprisingly unsettling scenarios. First up is discrimination. In the United States, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, or GINA, protects you from health insurers and most employers using your genetic data against you. That sounds reassuring, right? Except GINA doesn't cover life, disability, or long-term care insurance. Picture this. You discover you carry a variant that nudges your risk for a particular cancer. A life insurer sees that flag and decides to bump your premium by a few $100s a year. You never even applied for a policy, but that insurer already knows a little more about your health future than you do. Next, the police. Many of you have heard about the Golden State Killer being caught thanks to a genealogy site. That was a triumph for the victims, but it also shows how a relative's DNA sample can become a shortcut to your own identity, even if you never signed up for the service. Courts can also issue subpoenas compelling a testing company to hand over raw or processed genetic data. That means your DNA could end up as evidence in a civil dispute, say a paternity case, or even a criminal proceeding, all without you ever stepping foot in a courtroom. Potential legal consequences aside, here's a curveball. When you upload your genome, you're also spilling the beans about everyone who shares your DNA. Parents, siblings, cousins, that mysterious half-sibling you never knew existed. That can lead to some awkward family reunions. Imagine discovering, via a DNA report, that you're not biologically related to the man who raised you, or that a rare disease-linked variant you carry flags your entire family for higher insurance premiums, even if you're the only one who actually has the mutation. Now, let's talk about the subtle, everyday creep. Companies love to mash up your genetic health predictions with your browsing history. The result? Hyper-personalized ads that know you better than your own mother. If your DNA suggests a predisposition towards high cholesterol, you might start seeing ads for low-fat cheese the moment you open your email. If a gene linked to anxiety pops up, you could be bombarded with mindfulness apps and therapy services, all before you've even thought about feeling stressed. And price discrimination isn't just a buzzword. Retailers could adjust the price of a product you're genetically inclined to buy, say, premium dairy for someone who's lactose intolerant, without any transparent justification. Imagine getting a coupon for ultra-low lactose milk the same day your DNA report tells you you're 99% lactose intolerant. Creepy? Absolutely. Illegal? Absolutely not. Finally, the long-term gamble. Your genetic data may be archived for decades, later repurposed for studies you never imagined. Think gene editing trials, synthetic biology, or even forensic databases. Laws change. A regulation that protects genetic data today could be repealed tomorrow, opening the door for broader commercial exploitation. And as AI gets better at interpreting genomes, today's minor risk could become tomorrow's actionable health directive, dictating lifestyle choices you never consented to. The takeaway on this is that your DNA isn't just a one-time snapshot. It's a living document that can be rewritten by future tech and policy. But what if you've already sent your DNA off? What can you do? First, export and encrypt your raw data as soon as you receive it. Keep a personal offline copy. Second, read the assignment clause in the privacy policy. If the company can sell or transfer your data to any successor, you might want to look for an opt-out on that as well. Third, opt out of research and third-party sharing during sign-up. Fourth, exercise your legal rights, whether it's the CPRA in California, the GDPR in Europe, or any state-level statute, to request deletion or restriction of processing, especially if the company changes ownership. And finally, educate your family. Let them know that submitting their DNA also reveals information about you, so they can make an informed decision. Think of your genome as a family heirloom. Keep it safe, know who you're handing it to, and always ask, is this a gift or a loan? All these non-breach risks underline why the legal framework matters. So let's see what protections actually exist on the books. Here's the rule book that's trying, slowly, to keep up. In the United States, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, or GINA, bars health insurers and employers from using genetic data, but does not cover life, disability, or long-term care insurance. In the European Union, the GDPR treats genetic data as a special category that requires explicit consent, yet member state implementations vary, and law enforcement exemptions can still override those safeguards. In California, the California Privacy Rights Act, CPRA, adds a right to opt out of the sale of personal information, which you can invoke for genetic data. There's upcoming legislation. In Washington, D.C., the Genomic Data Privacy Act, proposed in 2025, aims to tighten limits on secondary use, but it's stuck in committee. The bottom line is the law is catching up, but it's still playing hopscotch while the lab sprints ahead. All right, let's talk about a scenario that feels like a plot twist straight out of a thriller. What happens to your DNA if the company that holds it goes bust or gets bought out? First, a quick reality check. In March of 2025, 23andMe did file for bankruptcy. They went to bankruptcy court, and a nonprofit led by one of their co-founders actually bought the company back, which I look at as kind of a best case scenario in this situation. But the bankruptcy risk is real for any service that stores massive, irreplaceable genetic data sets. Why this matters? One is that your data set is a commodity. When a company files for Chapter 11 or it's acquired, its assets, including customer databases, are sold to the highest bidder. That buyer could be a competitor, a data broker, or even a foreign entity with different privacy standards. 2, consent may not transfer. Most terms of service clauses contain language like, we may assign or transfer your data to a successor or affiliate in the event of a merger, acquisition, or bankruptcy. In practice, that means you could wake up one morning with your genome in the hands of a company who you never signed up for. 3, regulatory gaps. In the US, the FTC can enforce certain privacy promises, but once a business is liquidated, the enforcement mechanisms become murkier. In the EU, the GDPR requires a new controller to notify data subjects within 72 hours of a transfer, but that notification often lands in a generic email that many users never read. 4 is data integrity and continuity. If the original lab ceases operations, you may lose access to your raw data files, health risk reports, and any updates to interpretations. That's a loss of personal health information you can't simply re-download elsewhere. You need to treat your DNA like a digital heirloom. Keep a personal copy, know the contractual language, and stay alert for any news about the company's financial health. That way, if the lab shuts its doors, you won't be left stranded with a half-filled DNA bottle and a full-blown privacy nightmare. You don't have to throw your cheek swab in the trash, though, but you can definitely tighten the leash. Here's a checklist you can follow right now. First up is the quick wins. Read the consent sheet carefully. Look for language like share data with third parties for research. Deselect that option. Upload limits. Skip the optional health surveys and don't import external GED.com files unless you absolutely trust the platform. Unchecked boxes are data leaks waiting to happen. Encryption at rest. After you receive your results, download the raw data. Most services let you export a CSV and store it on an encrypted volume. Veracrypt works great. Use a privacy-focused service. Consider alternatives like Nebula Genomics, which offers end-to-end encryption and open-source pipelines, or DNA.land, a nonprofit that minimizes data sharing. Opt out of research. Most companies let you withdraw consent for research use. Head to the privacy portal and submit the opt-out request. Exercise your legal rights. If you're in California, invoke your CPRA right to delete or restrict processing. If you're in the EU, send a GDPR data subject request to the company's data protection officer. Community vigilance. Join the genetic privacy subreddit. Sign petitions urging lawmakers to pass the Genomic Data Privacy Act, and keep an eye on news about corporate data sharing practices. Pro tip, if you're only curious about ancestry, try digging through public records. Census data, voter rolls, old newspapers. No saliva required. And you keep the family secrets where they belong, in the archives. What's on the horizon? Edge sequencing and on-device analysis. Companies claim future kits will crunch your DNA inside the device, never uploading raw data. Yet the models still need training data, so the privacy claim remains a marketing hook. Government-sponsored biobanks, nationwide genomic repositories being built for public health research. Participation may become mandatory for certain benefits, like Medicare-linked genomics. Consumer-owned sequencers. DIY devices let you keep the data at home, but they demand technical know-how and still raise questions about data sharing with open-source communities. The future may let you sequence your own genome on a coffee table gadget, but unless you lock the data behind a strong wall, the same surveillance state will still find a way in. And that's a wrap on today's genetic privacy concerns. Remember, your DNA isn't just a code. It's a passport that can open doors you never intended to knock on. If you decide to test the waters, do it with eyes wide open and a strong password on the side. If you liked this episode, smash the subscribe button, drop a review, and consider supporting the show on Patreon, your privacy fuel for the next episode. Until next week, stay skeptical, stay safe, and keep your genes and your jokes private. I'm Pseudo. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Impractical Privacy. Oh, and one last thing before you go. Why did the government install a mirror in the data center? Because it wanted to reflect on its privacy policies.